Hi, this is Dr. Kenton Bruce Anderson. I'm coming to you from the Batik Factory in Taluk Bahung, Malaysia. It's right upside of Penang, Malaysia, up in the woods along the beach. What you see here is me putting hot wax on top of a silk batik panel, and what you saw me do a moment before was put cold wax. The cold wax is like sketching with a chalk pencil or a tailor's chalk, and this section here is the heat application of wax, heated wax. And what you're going to see me do throughout this panel is not only sketch it out like this, but then color it in, and we'll talk about some of the challenges we face not only in making one artwork, but in shaping a life that is an expression of our artwork and an artistic expression of all of our mentors who influenced us. One of my earliest mentors was Dolores Bedrosky. Dolores Bedrosky was an Omaha artist from Omaha, Nebraska, and she was the first to sensitize me to the difference between men and women in terms of our ways of thinking. Women were often conceptualized, in her way of thinking, by phases of the moon. And she spent a lot of time talking to me about how the moon represents women and the sun often represents men. She would go on to become my best friend until her passing. And all those years, from when I was 14 and I met her until she passed at the age of 84 or 5, we spent our time in business together, and we spent our time learning spiritual practices and visiting the world around us in the most intense ways we could, trying to understand what is reality, how can we observe reality most closely, and then how can we present it most accurately, or at least most artistically for her background. This would stand me in good stead as an artist and then as a grad student in communication and a performer, but later I would go on to grad school to get a science degree. And in that science degree, one of the mentors I came across was Dr. Joseph Woelfel at the University of Buffalo. And he was one of my primary mentors then in my grad program for my PhD, and he and I went on to do research together and have been published in multiple journal articles around the world. Because what we were exploring at that stage of my life was not just how do you artistically present the world or examine the world, but how do you do this empirical exploration of the world in a way that can be checked by others and verified, and then the whole community of experts can agree upon a particular way of seeing it, expressing it. In other words, how are facts created? So I went in my life all the way from creating facts to, well, all the way from creating art to creating facts. But now I'm at the place where I want to create art again. And so this particular series is me getting back to my roots as an artist. At the Batik Factory in Malaysia, I was asked to come in and do a residency, which means that all of the factory workers there and artists on staff could watch what I was doing and incorporate anything they wanted from my techniques into their work, but at the same time, they could teach me all the techniques I'd need to work in their medium. And so you will see in a moment, one of the people, Azirin, has been very instructive for me learning to use the tools of the trade and the various techniques that were involved. And at the end of this video, you'll see him waving his greetings to you all. What I'm doing now, of course, is putting in the background around these moons. And these moons are special not just because they are an attempt to capture the realistic view of our moon, but instead because these are part of my series trying to come up with an understanding of moons in general. And so I chose a fantastic or fanciful series of moons, the moons of Jupiter, which very few of us have ever actually seen in person. And those of us who've had a chance to see them in pictures might notice there's a lot of them. And so these particular series of moons are my way of capturing the essence. But that essence also has a relevance to us here on Earth. And that relevance is just how many incarnations or reiterations or faces of women that we see around us. And that women's contribution to the making of our universe has to take multiple faces and multiple dimensions. And so my focus here is on the women in our world and in my life. You'll also see this little white area I've left open for the moment, and that's where I will put a fanciful Earth image. But it's not just our Earth, it's any Earth that could be anywhere, even in this fanciful moons of Jupiter area of the universe. Do you see the stars? Women are stars to me. Men can be stars too, but I want you to understand that I see women as stars. They are shining sources of energy, sources of light, and in my life especially, they have been sources of illumination and enlightenment. But I've also found many mentors who were men and who enlightened me, if you like, and Dr. Wolfel certainly was one of those. But many others have been involved in my life, and we'll talk about those in successful videos, I hope. As you look at this panel, you'll notice the gold colors. Now that gold isn't actually paint. It's actually the wax. The wax has been blended with a kind of binder, and that binder gives it that orangish gold color. Now it looks very magical, but when we boil this, the gold leaves, and what remains is white. But the white is actually a buildup of multiple layers of grays and blacks that went into each layer of wax. That's not just one layer of wax on that moon in front of you. Instead, that's multiple layers of wax over multiple layers of grays and blacks to give us a more 5 or 3-dimensional moon face. And in the final pieces, those will show. But in the final piece that we pulled out of the actual processing baths, the gold was all gone. And eventually, my goal is to bring back the gold as real gold leaf. As we pan across this, imagine in your own life what your life would be like without the people who illuminate you, who gave you life, but who gave you light, who gave you a desire to see more, to build more, to do more, or to be more. And that for me is what moons are. They're just out of our reach. They're the other. And that other who gives us reflected light, and that reflected light helps us to grow and become something we may never have become without them. I hope you've enjoyed this view of the Penang Moon Batik panel. There's our Earth. And looking from that Earth, we see whole universes. We see stars. We see people like Azirin who help us. And they help us to create our great work, our great legacy. And I hope that for you. I hope that you too find those people in your life who help you grow. Because without them, we cannot, any of us, grow on our own. I hope you've enjoyed this trip to my moons of Jupiter. Please like and subscribe if you want to receive notification of new videos as they drop in our Reflections on Art Making series. Thank you for watching.